محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من عون.
And we specifically thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the greatest favor that He has sent in this month of Rabi al-Awwal, Rabi al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He caused to manifest the greatest manifestation of His favor, of His blessing, of His mercy, and that is in the form of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower His salawat and salam, His blessings and peace upon our beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and upon His pure family, His noble companions, His pure wives who are the mothers of the believers, and all those generations that follow Him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ila yawm al-qiyamah. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. And we beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the barakah of His beloved Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to make us and our offspring ila yawm al-qiyamah from those people of faith, from those people who love Allah and His beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and those people who follow in His footsteps sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah, we are in this blessed month of the Mawlid al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Mawlud al-Nabi, Milad al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which all means the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It is the sign of a believer that we show happiness. As I mentioned in the previous lecture last week, that we have to show happiness and rejoice at the birth of the beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It is fard that as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us for His bounty, for His favor and for His mercy, you should celebrate, you should be happy, you should rejoice. And the greatest manifestation of the mercy of Allah is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because none other in creation was called by the name of Rahmatul lil Alameen. Many in creation, you can say there are merciful people. Alhamdulillah, to be merciful is a quality. Many people from the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only human beings, but even other creation, for example, animals and so forth, they have some qualities of mercy. But there's a difference between being merciful and there is a difference between being a mercy for all the worlds. So when it comes to being a mercy for all the worlds, this maqam and this status is reserved only for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. None other in creation has this title, has this maqam. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself praises Himself and says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, that all praises for Allah. He has pride because He is the only one worthy of having pride subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He is telling the creation that the praise belongs to me. I am the Lord of all the worlds. So He is saying that I am sustaining all the worlds. At every moment, every single creation, every single atom in every single one of the different realms and worlds is being sustained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at the same time He is saying, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, that while I am sustaining every one of these worlds, I am the one who created them, yes. At the same time, I have sent my beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as a mercy for these same worlds that I'm sustaining. Allahu Akbar. If we reflect on this ayah, if we sincerely reflect, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens the doors of reflection, then we see that this status is the greatest status that any creation can have amongst the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should rejoice about the beloved birth of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we should hold gatherings in which we will mention the blessed seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You know, the purpose of these gatherings of Mawlid is to get closer to Him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, closer to understanding who He is sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, so that we can fall in love with Him, so that we can start following Him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So through that we can become beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and ultimately that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us, then He will not punish us. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, He will forgive your sins. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, He will accept your du'as. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, then all your affairs will become easy, inshaAllah. So this is the reason that we celebrate the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If we see traditionally, these were gatherings of the Mawlid al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. These are not new gatherings. These were gatherings that were taking place, as I mentioned last week. Even the Sahaba would gather and they would remember Allah's favor upon them by sending the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Even the Sahaba would mention lines of poetry in which they would praise the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Whether it be the uncle of the Prophet, Sayyidina Abbas radiallahu anhu, he mentioned Allahu Akbar, he mentioned some lines of poetry in the praise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which are not coming to mind right now, but inshallah in the future lectures I will research and I will bring them. When he mentioned these lines of poetry, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so happy that he gave a dua to Sayyidina Abbas. He said that may your teeth never decay. And it is said that even in the old age of Sayyidina Abbas radiallahu anhu, his teeth were perfectly fine. That they never decayed, they never fell out, they never rotted or anything like that, because of the barakah of the dua of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we find that if we praise the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and we learn about his seerah and we even recite poetry in his honor, then this is something which is beloved to Allah and his beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whether it be Sayyidina Hassan bin Thabit radiallahu anhu, as I mentioned those couplets of poetry, وَأَحْسَنُ مِنْكَ لَمْ تَرَ قَطُّ عَيْنٌ, that you are the best that any eye has ever seen, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We mentioned these lines, whether it be Sayyidina Ka'b ibn Zuhair radiallahu anhu, who was actually, a bounty was put upon him, because he was a poet, but he actually insulted the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in his poetry. He wasn't a believer in the beginning. And then when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this insulting poetry reached him, he said, I put a bounty on Ka'b's head, that whoever finds him shall kill him, because he's insulted the deen of Allah and he's insulted the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now Sayyidina Ka'b ibn Zuhair, he was doomed. Whenever any Sahaba would see him, they had the order to kill him. But what happened was Sayyidina Ka'b ibn Zuhair, look at the fortune and the nasib, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes a person's nasib from being a doomed person to being one of the beloved people. Allahu Akbar. Allah is the one who changes the hearts. So Sayyidina Ka'b ibn Zuhair, when it was the time of Fath Makkah, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam conquered Makkah and came back, and he was forgiving the people. Like Abu Sufyan, he said, whoever goes in the house of Abu Sufyan, we will not touch them, they'll be free. And the mercy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was being manifested, and such a mercy has not manifested before him or after him until now sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That a person who was being persecuted, when they came and conquered the same land, he manifested mercy, he did not go and kill people. This is an example for history, an example for the ages, and an example for the future, the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ. So coming back to Sayyidina Ka'b ibn Zuhair, when he heard that the Prophet ﷺ was forgiving people, and that he wrote insulting poetry for the Prophet ﷺ, now what does he do? He said, I have to reach the Prophet ﷺ. Somehow, I have to get into his presence and I have to ask him for forgiveness. That's the only way that I'm going to be forgiven. So what did he do? He wrapped himself and he put an niqab upon himself so that no one can know who he is. And finally he hid, and finally he came to the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Ya Rasulullah, the Prophet ﷺ was sitting amongst some of his companions, like Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. They were in the majlis of the Prophet ﷺ, and this person who was masked, he came to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, O Messenger of Allah, if Ka'b comes to you and asks you for forgiveness, will you forgive him? And the Prophet ﷺ, he already knew who he was, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed him of these things. But the Prophet ﷺ was quiet and he said, yes, if Ka'b comes, ask me forgiveness, I will forgive him. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I'm Ka'b. He opened his veil, he said, I am Ka'b. The Sahaba, they were grabbing their swords. This is the person who insulted our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Umar was about to, he grabbed his sword, unsheathed his sword. Ya Rasulullah, give me permission. Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he's ready to kill this person who insulted his beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, leave him to me. Then right away, because he was a poet, he was a poet, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the companions, they asked him, aren't you the one who insulted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And now you're coming and asking for forgiveness? And then Ka'b said, no, I didn't say those things. Rather, I said this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired him of poetry in praise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at that moment. Fil badi, inspiration. And this qasida is one of the oldest qasida, and it's known as Banat Su'ad. And he started to recite this poetry in honor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when he came to a verse, he said that, Ya Rasulullah, you are like the Indian sword. You are like because the Indian sword was one of the most powerful weapons at that time. The sword of India, very powerful weapon. In battles it was used. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I corrected him. He said, don't say I'm the Indian sword, say I'm the sword from the swords of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Min suyufillah. And then the Prophet ﷺ took his shawl, his burda, and he gave it to Ka'b. This was the first qasidatul burda, as known, because the Prophet ﷺ took his blessed burda sharifa, his blessed shawl, his mantle, and he gave it to Ka'b as a gift for his poetry in honor of the Prophet ﷺ. So my dear brothers and sisters, if it was wrong, if it was bid'ah, if it was shirk to recite poetry in honor of the Prophet ﷺ, why would the Prophet ﷺ honor such people? Why would the Prophet ﷺ make dua for Sayyidina Abbas radiallahu anhu? Why would the Prophet ﷺ give his blessed mantle, the mantle of nubuwwah of the Prophet ﷺ to Ka'b ibn Zuhair radiallahu anhu, a person who was in the beginning a person who insulted, who was doomed, who had a bounty on his head, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided him and gave him the love of the Prophet ﷺ. Look what he received. Allahu Akbar. And then he was known as a Sahabi, he became Muslim at the hands of the Prophet ﷺ. He accepted Islam. And now for us, he is a person that we have to respect throughout the ages because he's a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. So traditionally these gatherings of Mawlid, they're gatherings of remembrance of Allah. They're gatherings in which we recite the Quran. They're gatherings in which we recite the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, especially pertaining to his seerah, al-tayyibah, his pure biography ﷺ. They're gatherings of knowledge. Unfortunately, sometimes such gatherings in the name of Mawlid al-Nabi ﷺ, they are being conducted throughout the world, but they're not sometimes they're missing things in them. They're missing things, aspects of Sharia that the people need to abide by. Sometimes there's mixing amongst the sexes, there's mixing among brothers and sisters, which is something not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is something we should take care of, right? There should be separation between men and women, right? So that there is no fitna, right? If we have these gatherings and they're in a pure form, right? Another thing that is missing is the knowledge aspect, right? Traditionally, in the Arab world and even in the subcontinent, there would be a text of Mawlid, like I have in front of me here, that it would be recited and it would be about the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. So these gatherings would be gatherings of knowledge. You would learn things in these gatherings, right? Or if there is no text that is recited, an alim or a shaykh would give a lecture at the end of the Mawlid gathering, towards the end. And then you would learn from his speech and learn from his ulum, right? Or if it was a sisters gathering, sometimes only sisters would gather and they would have their own celebration, and there would be an alima or a shaykha, and she would address the sisters and they would learn. So there has to be a learning aspect. We learn, right? We have to learn. For example, this Mawlid written by Imam Ali ibn Muhammad al-Habashi, a great scholar and wali from Yemen, radiallahu anhu. He wrote a Mawlid called Simtud Durra. In one of the chapters, he explains some of the ahadith pertaining to the blessed light of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, pertaining to the blessed birth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he mentions these great ahadith. What does he mention? He mentions about the shama'il, the blessed characteristics of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, one of the ahadith, that أَنَّ أَوَّلَ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ اللَّهُ هُوَ النُّورُ الْمُودَعُ فِي هَذِهِ السُّورَةِ. That the first creation that Allah created was the light of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَنُورُ هَذَا الْحَبِيبِ أَوَّلُ مَخْلُوقٍ بَرَزَ فِي الْعَالَمِ. So the light of this beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the first creation that manifested in the world. وَمِنْهُ تَفَرَّعَ الْوُجُودُ خَلْقًا بَعْدَ خَلْقٍ فِيمَا حَدَثَ وَمَا تَقَادَمَ. And then from his blessed essence in that nur, the other creation were created one after the other. Then he mentions a hadith of Sayyidina Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari radiyallahu anhuma. He said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, بِأَبِي وَأُمِّي أخبرني عن أول شيء خلقه الله قبل الأشياء. That, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inform me about بِأَبِي وَأُمِّي, by my father, my mother, and my father and my mother. This was a way that the companions used to address the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sometimes they would say, may my father and mother be your ransom, Ya Rasulullah. May we be sacrificed for you, Ya Rasulullah. This was their love. He said, أخبرني, Ya Rasulullah, inform me of the first creation, the first thing that Allah created, قبل الأشياء, before anything else, before the other things. قال يا جابر, the Prophet ﷺ said, O Jabir, إن الله, that indeed Allah, خلق created قبل الأشياء before the other things نور نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. The light of your beloved Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم من نوري, from his light, from a manifestation of the light of Allah. Another hadith where the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم says كنت أول النبيين في الخلق وآخرهم في البعث. That I was the first Nabi, first Prophet of Allah in creation, but the last of them being sent. Meaning the light of the Prophet ﷺ was created first, but he was sent as the final Prophet ﷺ. This is why when some of the Sahaba, one of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, he asked the Prophet ﷺ, مَتَى كُنْتَ نَبِيًّا? Ya Rasulullah, when were you a prophet? The Prophet ﷺ said, I was a prophet when Adam was between clay and water. You know, some people have this misconception, the Prophet ﷺ received nubuwwah at 40 years old. He didn't receive nubuwwah at 40 years old. He was already a prophet, but he declared his nubuwwah. He announced his nubuwwah at 40 years old. There's a difference. You cannot say the Prophet ﷺ was just a Nabi at 40. Yes, he received his first wahi at 40. We know that. Surah Al-A'raf, the first 5 ayah in Ghar Hira. This is true. But he was always a Nabi. He had the characteristics of nubuwwah, and he was asked, when were you a Nabi? He said, I was a Nabi when the Prophet Adam was not even fully clean, he was between clay and water. Meaning that even when my light was created, I was still a Nabi. Alhamdulillah. So these are and other riwayat that show أنه أول الخلق وجودا وأشرفهم مولودا. That he is the first creation that was created by Allah, and he is the most noble of them to be born, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So we learn ulum, we learn knowledge from these blessed gatherings of Mawlid al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Some people say, why do you say Eid Milad al-Nabi? I'm going to inshallah stop after I mention this last point, and then we'll inshallah perform sunnah. Why do you say Eid Milad al-Nabi? Why is it Eid? People say that we only have 2 Eids, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. That's it. If you say anything else is Eid, this is bid'ah, this is haram, this is shirk, or one or the other. They use these different categories to, we should be very afraid of using these for our Muslim brothers and sisters. These terms are not something light. How can you call your Muslim brother and sister a kafir, or call them a mushrik, or call them a person who does bid'ah? Because bid'ah is the Prophet ﷺ said that a person who does bid'ah is going to be in the fire. How can you judge a Muslim, a person who's saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and you're going to call him a kafir? Beware of this. There's also a hadith of the person who does takfir, a person who likes to do takfir, who likes to call people kafir. On the day of judgment, it's going to come back to that person. That person is going to be raised a kafir. Because they like to judge people, they like to be a demigod, astaghfirullah. Right? We should be trying to save people from the hellfire, not trying to curse people and saying this is a mushrik and categorizing this is a kafir and so forth. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the proper adab in our relations with one another. So, why do we say Eid? Eid means celebration. So, Eid al-Fitr we know, Eid al-Adha, these are the 2 celebrations of Muslims. Why do we say Eid Milad al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Well, I would say, if it wasn't for Eid Milad al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, there wouldn't be Eid al-Fitr, there wouldn't be Eid al-Adha, and we wouldn't even smell the faith. We wouldn't even be able to smell La ilaha illallah. So this Eid is greater, because if it wasn't for the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, how would we know about Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha or fasting or zakah or salah or about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We would still be in times of Jahiliyyah. We will still be in practicing those evil things and those things of Jahil, those things of ignorance. So alhamdulillah, this is an Eid, this is a celebration, because we're happy for the birth of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, can we use the word Eid for the birth of the Prophet ﷺ? Is there a proof from the Quran? Yes, there is a proof from the Quran. When the disciples of Prophet Isa alayhi salam, Nabiullah Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam, they said, "O Prophet Isa alayhi salam, tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a sign." This is in Surah Al-An'am, in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Surah Al-Ma'idah, which means the table spread. So the surah was named for this incident. What was the incident? That the disciples, the Hawariyin, they said, "Oh Prophet Isa, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send us a ma'idah from the skies. A table spread from the sky so we can eat from that and this will be a sign for us. Prophet Isa said, why don't you believe? In kuntum mu'minin? They said, yeah, we believe, but we want to have this, the itminan al-qalb. We want to have the sakina, and we want to, see a sign that would give our hearts peace of mind, that we know that this is the true religion. Said, okay. So Prophet Isa made a dua. قال عيسى ابن مريم اللهم ربنا أنزل علينا مائدة من السماء. Oh Allah, cause to descend from the sky for us a table spread from the sky. مائدة من السماء تكون لنا عيدا لأولنا وآخرنا. And make this a Eid. The word Eid was used by who? Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam. Ruhullah. Not just any ordinary person, but a Nabi and one of the greatest prophets. Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he said, make this a celebration لأولنا وآخرنا, for the first of us and for the last of us, وآية منك, and make this a sign from you, O Allah, وارزقنا وأنت خير الرازقين, and provide for us, and you are the best of providers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed He sent that sign, and they ate from that and they celebrated. So I'm saying, if a table spread is coming from Allah, and Prophet Isa alayhi salam is saying this is Eid, then what is greater, the table spread or rahmatul lil alamin? What is greater, a table spread or قَدْ جَاءَكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ نُورٌ وَكِتَابٌ مُّبِينٌ? There has come from Allah, indeed there has come to you from Allah a light and a clear book. The first thing they say, the light is the light of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the clear book is the Quran. So what is a greater sign? Is it the table spread or is it Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You guys can do the math, and we can, of course, we can understand that the greatest sign is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, rahmatul lil alamin. So we can indeed call this Eid Miladun Nabi. You should not fear and you should not be scared. There is proof from the Quran, not only from the Quran, from the dua of a Nabi, Sayyidina Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us true love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to hold these gatherings of Mawlid Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in a way which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that we increase in connection and love of Him and in connection to Him, and we increase in ulum and nafi', which is beneficial knowledge and accepted knowledge, Ya Rabbil Alameen. We beg you, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, for the barakah of this month and the barakah of the one who came in this month sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that you will fulfill all our noble intentions, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, that you grant the relief and give relief to the suffering of the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whoever is suffering in any way, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give them relief from their suffering. Ya Allah, remove any trials and tribulations from them, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. We beg you to give shifa and afiyah to all those who are sick and suffering in any form. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, those people who have passed away from the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, raise their darajat, forgive them, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Turn their sayyi'at into hasanat, Ya Rabbil Alameen, and give them Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la in the company of your Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all Jannatul Firdaus in the company of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and witnessing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa
واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم يا رب بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم محمد سيد الكونين